The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Alrighty, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. This is part 2 of the 12-part webinar series on the 90-day business sprint, hosted by Chris Snyder, the CEO and president of the Exit Planning Institute, as well as the newly awarded Thought Leader of the Year. Just a few housekeeping notes before I turn it over to Chris today. First off, my name is Drew English. I'm the program coordinator here at EPI. These webinars are being recorded, and I will send them out after each session. So if you just want to keep an eye out for your emails, you will be getting an email from me this afternoon with the recording attached to it. And if you have any questions either during or after the webinar, please let me know. I could then get that over to Chris, and we could definitely answer those questions for you. But for now, I will turn it over to Chris Snyder, and he'll get going. Chris?
Thank you, Drew. I wanted to welcome everyone to webinar number 2 of our 11 Actions series. We've got a good group, 135 people registered for today, and I know how valuable your time is, so we'll kind of get into it here. I'm actually joining you after just returning from a vacation in sunny Florida, and where I just finished up vacation, and while I was there I had a chance to go back to visit Bowman's Beach Park, which you see a picture of it there, which is where I wrote a good chunk of the first draft of Walking to Destiny. It was almost a year to the day that I went back. And that picnic bench that you see there was where I started a good chunk of the book and spent many of my afternoons in the month of January 2016 writing that first draft. I came back very confident that I had the book off to a really good start. What I didn't realize is that when you write a book, you actually write it 4 times, not just once. You put the book down after writing for a month. Pick it up after like 2 or 3 weeks, and you look at it again, you're like, oh my God, this is terrible. So you end up writing the book a second time, and then you think you got it down, you give it to the editors, and the editors, they tear it all up, and you end up writing it a third time, and eventually the 4th time you start to get it right. But it was a great week in Florida, and it was very nice to go back, as you can see with a picture of my son there, and show him where I started the book. And when we started last month, I talked about our next upcoming 90 days. Happy to announce that we completed our first SEPA program in Atlanta, Georgia State University, a beautiful facility there. Our local members there did a great job of hosting us, making us feel that nice southern hospitality while we were there. We had 25 attendees to our program, and it went off fantastic. I also had the opportunity to attend AMNAA's conference in Las Vegas, and as Drew mentioned, honored to accept the award as Thought Leader of the Year from the Alliance of Mergers and Acquisitions Advisors. So a couple of big weeks there, and we've got a few more coming up. We've got another, I think as I mentioned the last time, we released 2 new state of owner readiness surveys, one in the Nashville, Tennessee area, and the other in San Diego, California. I am working on finalizing the Twin Cities state of owner readiness survey, which will be completed here in another week or so, in preparation for the Twin Cities Owners Forum, which is upcoming. And then we'll be off to DC and Arizona for the Owners Forums in DC and Arizona. So we've got another good, strong, another 60 days coming up here for Snyder Value Index and the Exit Planning Institute. Now, making sure that we're closing the loop, if you attended the webinar series last month, you were given some homework, which was to grade yourself on how well you're currently integrating the 11 actions into the way you run your business and your life. So I hope you have taken that exercise to heart and have completed your actions. If you do this, with each one of these webinars, you'll be making good progress. Today we're going to talk about the first action, which is shifting your paradigm. And I want you to experience today the power of a paradigm shift. And it's the first action intentionally. I purposely wrote that because I remember my dad always saying to me, you got to get your head right first before you launch into your endeavors. And the first thing we really need to do is change the way we view exit planning. Now, while I was in Florida, I had a chance to play a little golf, and I met a guy there named Tom, who was from New Hampshire. Tom owns a construction company and has been doing pretty well the last few years. All you have to do is drive around your cities. I'm sure you're seeing construction everywhere. And he said things have been very, very good for him. And even though he has had to survive some very lean years over the past. And Tom said something to me while we were playing golf. And when he said it, I said, this is something I have to share on the next webinar. And you know, what Tom said to me, he says, you know, I've never been a nail pounder. Now, Tom started his business over 30 years ago with his brothers. He's got 2 sons in the business now. But one of the things that he says, even in the early days, I said, you know, even in the early days, you weren't pounding nails? He said, no, I've never done that. I've always looked at my business from the outside in, and I've always run my business as if it were an asset that one day I might want to transition or monetize that asset. And I was very impressed with that, and not even in his early days did he get sucked into running the day-to-day operations. I also had a chance to play with another business owner named Mark, who owned a series of bowling alleys. And Mark is retired now. He has bowled on the professional bowling circuit, but he never bowled as a true professional. But one of the things that that Mark asked me was what I did. And when I explained what I did, he said to me, boy, Chris, I sure could have used a guy like you 10 years ago when I was getting ready to exit my business. Tom didn't have the same experience, or Mark didn't have the same experience that Tom had. Mark basically told me that when he went to exit his business, he got taken to the cleaners. And when he went to exit, he said, unfortunately, he had a heart attack, and it took a lot out of him, and he was forced into a situation where he had to exit his business. Now, you know, bowling alleys aren't necessarily, you know, the greatest business to be in per se, but nevertheless, Mark is a good example of someone that got affected by the 5 Ds and was pushed out of his business, wasn't able to exit on his terms or his timeline. Now, the reason I bring those two up is that Mark really ran a lifestyle business. His business, while he was running it, provided a great lifestyle for him and a good income. It allowed him to get out and do things that he loved in terms of bowling and bowling with professionals and hosting tournaments. But he never built any value into his business. And then when the time came, unfortunately, when he was forced into it, he was forced to liquidate the business. And like he said, he had a number of people take advantage of him, and he didn't really have any options. Tom, on the other hand, is 58 years old, a year older than I am, and he's brought his 2 sons in, and he said to me, because he was even taking phone calls on the course, and he said to me, my son's calling, he needs to buy some more equipment. Tom has a lot more time on his hands. His business runs without him. He is, in effect, owner. His business is owner independent. And there's a lot to be said for that. In fact, I think owner independence might be the one factor above all others that tell me whether or not a business has any value. So both of these men had very different experiences. As I said, Mark is had a lifestyle business, but Tom really is a value creator. And that really brings us, you know, to our topic for today, which is your first paradigm shift that you need to make, which is exit planning is nothing more than good business strategy. I want you to forget today everything that you've learned so far about exit planning. I want you to experience the power of a paradigm shift, a new paradigm that will have you looking at exit planning in a different way. Let's first define what a paradigm is. So a paradigm simply is the way you view the world. Paradigms are the source of our attitudes and our behaviors. The term paradigm shift was introduced by Thomas Kuhn in his book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. Kuhn in his book shows how almost every significant breakthrough in the field of scientific endeavor is first a break with tradition, with old ways of thinking, and with old paradigms. And that's what I'm trying to accomplish in my book, Walking to Destiny, and that's what EPI is trying to accomplish for the exit planning industry. Now, many of you are probably familiar with Stephen Covey's highly acclaimed book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. For me, it's a very personal book. It was given to me back in 1991 by a good friend of mine, and reading The 7 Habits dramatically changed the way I approached my future. Mainly what it did is it created a paradigm shift in my mind, in the way I've thought of myself as a father, as a husband, as a friend, and as a businessman. And I can honestly say that I probably wouldn't even be on this webinar with you today or have any businesses that I own today if my friend had not given me that book. She saw something that I needed at that time, and she was right on point. The basis of Stephen Covey's book, and in fact my book, is about redefining your paradigms, the way you view the world and your roles in it. Covey suggests that an inside-out paradigm shift is needed to develop a new level of thinking. He argues that our paradigms shape how we behave and act in everyday situations. They are the source of our attitudes and our behaviors. In other words, the way we see the problem is the problem. And by shifting our paradigm, we can shift into a new way of thinking. See, the problem that we have with exit planning right now is in a large part the way it's been teed up and the way people have viewed it. The tendency is to view exit planning as something you'll deal with down the road. And then you get hit with something like what Mark experienced and you're stuck. The way to deal with it, the shift that needs to occur, is you need to look at exit planning as nothing more than strong business strategy. If you integrate the concepts of exit planning into the way you run your business every day, the timing of the exit basically becomes irrelevant because your business is always ready. And the beauty is that you're not only building a business that is positioned to transition, hopefully on your terms and timeline, but more so you're building a business that has that's adding sales and income and value and benefiting you today. So the first shift I want you to make is I want you to forget about the future and I want you to think about today. If you take care of things today, you will have lots of exit options, whether that be on your terms or not. Now, I want to read you something from Stephen Covey's book, one of the paragraphs that I think is real important. And Covey says, the more we are aware of our basic paradigms, maps, or assumptions, and the extent to which we have been influenced by our experience, the more we can take responsibility for those paradigms, examine them, test them against reality, listen to others, and be open to their perceptions, thereby getting a larger picture and a far more objective view. So the first shift is to shift our thinking about what exit planning is. And to get started on that, let's turn to the 4 C's. We're going to cover the 4 C's in more detail in July, but let's start by looking at this today. So what I want you to do is I want you to get out a sheet of paper right now, and across the top of the paper I want you to write down the 4 C's: human capital, customer capital, structural capital, and social capital. Write that across the top. What you need to understand is that 80% of the value of your business is tied to these four factors. These are what we call intangible assets. And we'll review, like I say, we'll review more of this in July. For proof of this, all you need to do is look at your own balance sheet. If you look at your balance sheet, does the net asset value on your balance sheet truly reflect the value of your business? For most of you, I would argue that it does not, that it might only reflect about 20 or 30% of the value of your business. The other 70 or 80% is tied up in these four C's. Or if you look at your income statement, right, does the cash flow or the net operating profit truly reflect the benefit that you are deriving from the business? In that case as well, the answer is probably no, because you have to normalize income, you have add backs, you have one-time non-recurring charges that need to get added back in to reflect the real number that's being generated for the business. And this real number is the number that's used for valuation purposes. So now if you've written that across the top, under human capital, ask yourself, what makes strong human capital? Write it down. You might have written down strong management tenure, reliable management, experienced management, loyalty. It could be a whole number of different factors. Think back to our last webinar when I went through the 4 C's with Flexalloy and what made Flexalloy so strong. Now do the same for customer. What makes strong customer capital? What integrates your business into your customer's business? What makes your relationship with them so valuable? Right? Is it the products? Could be the products that you serve. It could be the service. It could be contracts. It could be diversity. Now do the same with structural capital and social capital. Structural capital is your infrastructure. It's solid financial statements. It's your information technology. It's your processes. How well are those documented? And then last, do the social capital. Social capital is basically a reflection of your culture. What's the rhythm of your business? Does your business have rhythm? How do you communicate both within the company and outside to suppliers and customers? What's it like doing business with your company? Now, if you've started your list and you've written all those things down, or at least a few of those things down, what you basically have is the basis for building good business strategy, right? This is what makes our businesses strong. If we have strong human capital, all other things being equal, our business is going to be more valuable. If we have strong customer relationships, deep tenured and integrated relationships with our customers, all other things being equal, we're going to have more valuable business. Now, what's the difference between these things and exit strategy? Really nothing when you think about it. By building these strengths into your business, you are in effect positioning yourself for a strong exit, whether this be on your timeline and terms or not. And even if you're not thinking of selling outright, but rather positioning to transition the business to your children or your employees, you are in effect setting them up for success, dramatically improving the probability of a successful transition. So the point is, forget the future and focus on now. Focus on building strong intangible assets, and you'll position yourself for a successful exit, whether that be on your terms or not, in good times or in bad times. Picture yourself as the buyer of your business. Aren't these the things that you would be looking for if you were going to buy a business? Wouldn't you be looking for talent? Wouldn't you be looking for strong contractual long-term customer relationships? Wouldn't you be looking for solid financial statements, good information technology, well-documented processes? And if you could buy a company that had a really strong culture and was independent of the owner, isn't that something you would want to buy? This is what exit strategy is. Exit strategy is building strong business fundamentals. And if you focus on that, you're going to have a lot of options for how to transition your business, whether that be to an inside option, such as an employee or management or family member, or if you decide to sell to a third party. How would a private equity company look at your business? So you see, really, there is no difference. If we just focus on building a strong business, we will position ourselves for having a strong exit. And that's the first paradigm shift that you need to make. You need to understand that what you do today and how you build your business today not only benefits you today, but it also positions you for multiple exit options. And even if you have no intention of exiting now or in the near future, you'll position yourself to be independent of the business so you can focus on other things and collect a dividend for as long as you'd like Tom, my construction buddy. So what is exit planning? Exit planning combines the plan, the concept, the effort, and process into a simple strategy to build a business that's transferable through strong human, structural, customer, and social capital. The future of you and your family and your business are addressed by exit planning by creating value today. That's the way I define exit planning. And that's the way you should be defining exit planning. Now, there are other paradigm shifts that we need to address, and I've outlined them in Chapter 4, which hopefully you've all downloaded. And we're going to go through all of these over the course of the next year. But let me emphasize the second one down for now, moving from a future point of view to a present point of view. Exit planning is present. It's not something we do down the road when we get tired or we're ready to cash out or we get sick or we have a heart attack. It's something that we do now in the business, and what you do every day is going to affect that. So you don't want to view exit planning as something that you're going to do in the future. You want to look at exit planning as something you can do right now. Now, to move down this path, I'm going to talk about another one of my favorite authors, who is Wallace D. Wattles. And he wrote the book, The Science of Getting Rich, which is really more of a book around mastering your personal vision than it is about necessarily getting rich. And there's really 3 steps that Wallace D. Wattles talks about in developing your paradigm. First, you have to have a strong mental image of what you want. That mental image has to be thought out in great detail. If you look at your position, regardless of your age today, and you think out, I personally like to look out 10 years. And you begin to think about what your life's going to be like in 10 years, what your business is like. You start to create that mental image of where you're going and what that's going to feel like. You don't want to get too caught up in it, but you want to have enough detail that you can feel what it's like. I could tell you from a personal experience, which I was sharing with someone recently, that 10 years ago in 2006, I decided to launch my own business, my first business, and become an entrepreneur. And I can honestly tell you 10 years later that I'm pretty close to doing what I envisioned. I envisioned myself, getting up in the morning and looking at going for a run and going to visit one of my businesses and helping one of my presidents work on the business. And today I'm in that position, fortunately. 5 years ago, I brought my son into the business, and we've been working on a personal transition of the business, family business enterprise to him over the last 5 years. So the first step you want to do is you want to create a mental image of what your life's going to be like, what your business looks like in the next 10 years. Then you have to have the purpose to achieve it. And this is where value acceleration comes in, is it gives you a disciplined system that gives you a process for managing that path, that journey towards that, to achieving that mental image. And the third thing is you have to have the faith that you, in effect, can achieve it. And this also ties back to the methodology in that you have to believe in the methodology. Somebody at the SEPA program asked me about when I'm working with owners, how I sell exit planning to them. And basically what I told them is I don't really sell exit planning, I sell a process, or I teach a process, which is value acceleration. If we stay committed to that process over the long term, we will make continuous improvements every 90 days. So this leads me to a quote from Wallace D. Wattles. And basically what he said here is you must form a clear and definite mental picture of what you want. You cannot achieve the idea unless you have it yourself. So that's step one. Step two is behind your vision, you must have the purpose to realize it. And behind that purpose is an invincible and unwavering faith that the thing is yours and that it is at hand and that you only have to take possession of it. So you have to believe in it. And finally, the answer to prayer is not according to your faith while you are talking, but it's according to your faith while you are working. And I really like that particular quote because we all have strategies and plans, and you're probably already doing things related to the 4 C's today. But value acceleration and exit planning is grounded in action. So we can talk about it all we want, but unless we actually take action and shift our paradigm and then build our actions around that paradigm, we're never really going to make progress. And that leads me to one final quote for you, which is one of our favorites here at EPI from Oprah Winfrey. I believe that luck is preparation meeting opportunity. If you hadn't been prepared when the opportunity came along, you wouldn't have been lucky. Now there's about 1 out of 10 owners today that's doing anything proactive in managing their transition. We're all managing our businesses, but we're not necessarily managing our transition. And I would say that if you look at the statistics, only about 2 out of 10 businesses that go to market actually close, and only about 3 out of 10 businesses that are family transitions actually succeed through the second generation. And I would argue the case that I think that if only 1 out of 10 is actually doing anything proactive, the other 2 or 3 that are successful are getting lucky. But that means 7 or 8 out of 10 of us are not lucky. And we end up not being able to successfully transition our business. So we don't want to rely on luck. We want to be prepared. And if you don't take those actions, you might get lucky, but why test fate, right? So your homework for this month is to consider how well you're integrating the concepts of exit strategy in the way you operate your business every day, and viewing exit planning as something that's now, that's present. It's not future. And understanding that what you do today is going to affect your options down the road. And I'd like to take, between now and our next webinar, I'd like you to take some time to think about that and really think about whether or not you've integrated exit planning concepts into the way you're running your business. That means that you need to have a focus on value first. We all want sales and income, but we really need to focus on value first. And if we do that, we will get sales and income. Our next webinar is going to be Tuesday, March 14th from 1 to 2. And in that webinar, we're going to get into the third action, which is business is personal, how we align the three legs of the stool. And what we really addressed today was the first leg of the stool, getting our business prepared and positioning our business. But that's only part of the solution. The other part of the solution is that once we have our business set, we need to think about and look at what we're doing personally to get ourselves prepared and financially to get ourselves prepared. And we'll examine that in the next webinar on March 14th. I want to thank you for attending, and if you have any questions, I can answer those now. Otherwise, I will see you again on March 14th. Drew?
Yes, thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Like Chris said, the next webinar in this series will be March 14th. And like I said before, the webinar is recorded. I will be sending that out later this afternoon to everyone as well. If you have any questions, please let us know. If not, we will end the webinar, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you.